It's that old feeling again. The indigestion, the irritability, the sluggishness, the pressure to churn out half-assed art in a timely manner. In other words, I've started a new sketchbook. Yay! And not just any one. It's the Shizen Rough 100% cotton rag watercolor journal with the pretty green cover and ribbon ties. In this session, I tackled page 1 of this journal. I use the terms sketchbook and journal interchangeably, and of course, they may mean something else to you. You might notice how thick the sheets are, and yes, they are quite stiff. It's 140-pound, 300 GSM stuff. It just seems to be less dense than some others. So if we use the brownie analogy, it's more cakey rather than fudgy. And that surface. I had put this off in part because I was worried about choosing a proper sort of project that would work with it. You know, something kinda loose. But I didn't feel like doing another floral or abstract piece quite yet. But as it was taking way too long to decide, I thought, screw it, just do it. Which sounds more like a motivational catchphrase by a life coach guru than the half-hearted "go me" from someone looking for excuses to not clean her studio. I had pre-selected some colors from my drawer of watercolors. In my defense, at the time I arranged the drawer storage system, I had no idea how pompous that statement was going to sound. If you don't know what I'm talking about, but are mildly intrigued, check out the meat and storage chest video linked in the description. It's a good one, especially if you like watching musical watercolor pans. Both the thumbnail and undersketch were done with a Faber-Castell Polychromos color pencil in yellow ochre. Laying down a few quick color swaths with a modeler was a good idea because I didn't want to be too fussy too soon. I had toyed with the idea of limiting myself to just the 3 Aqua Elite brushes, but it's a rare painting where I want to make things harder for myself, so I ended up bringing in a couple of small round Neptunes later on. In case you missed it, the colors used here are Naples Yellow and Raw Umber from Core, Mummy Bauxite, a Primatech color from Daniel Smith, Naphthol Red from Da Vinci, and a couple from M. Graham, Payne's Gray and Hooker's Green. Just out of frame were the reference objects, the mug of tea and several saltine crackers. Sure, it was tempting to snarf 'em down, but mostly it was an incentive to get this done quickly so that I could enjoy my snack already. It was extra torturous because I had time to dessert videos playing in the background. Yeah, they're way too short, but it's the closest I'll ever get to a real British afternoon tea. Never mind that they're presented by a heavily Eastern European accented guy named Steve. It might not be for everyone, but this paper is sort of fun to work with. The way I don't know, sucks up the water made the painting process really interesting for me. Now, after I laid down some shadows under the crackers, the edges were a little too sharp, so I came back in with clean water, and it was very satisfying the way the edges softened. Later on, I made the shadows too dark, but at this point, it looked pretty good. The mug is from Krispy Kreme. The first time I tasted their donuts was on a work-related trip to Anaheim back in the 1990s. It was quite the treat. They're easier to get nowadays, even if we have to drive to the next town over. The thing is, if we're going to go out of our way for donuts, we prefer to hit smaller, non-chain businesses. The closest to us had a burnt-out letter on their signage for many months, so now we refer to them as Happy Don'ts, even though we do their don'ts. Further out is a place called Dockside Donuts in downtown Tacoma. We've made the early run to get a couple of their coconut angel bars on more than one occasion. Of course, my all-time favorite donut is the Bismarck, aka Boston Cream, aka Berliner, the ones with the custardy filling. But back to the painting. Can you feel the overwhelming sadness from those saltines for not being donuts? Please pardon my preoccupation with donuts. I needed pleasant thoughts after watching I Care a Lot on Netflix. There were a few moments that strained believability, but it was mostly well done and entertaining. It was also upsetting because the plot revolves around predation on the elderly. So donuts are a palate cleanser. Who knew? That's palate, not palette. No way would I waste a good donut to wipe the paint off of my porcelain. I can definitely see some advantages with this rough texture. Not only did it enhance the crackers in particular, it also added to the overall appeal of the piece. While I was initially concerned with how detailed I could get on this surface, it turned out to be a non-issue since I pretty much got the look that I wanted. It was around here when I started feeling really peckish. I mean, most of the work was done. Were the reference items even necessary anymore? But yeah, saltines aren't even my favorite cracker. I prefer a good club cracker, or better yet, chicken in a biscuit. Must be the MSG. Seriously, as a kid growing up in a Japanese American household, we had the Ajinomoto MSG shaker jar next to the Kikkoman soy sauce dispenser bottle. But if we're talking Asian crackers, then I recommend the bin bins from Thailand. They're both sweet and salty and are often found for $1 a bag. If you have an Asian market in your area, that is. I sometimes take it for granted that we have those options here in the Seattle area. Gosh, all of this talk about snacks. I must be hungry. Since my sepia pens from Faber-Castell haven't seen much action, I pulled out the brush-tipped one for some detailing. I like having these sepia pens. It's a nice change from the usual black ink. Surprisingly, considering the bumpiness of the paper, I had no trouble with any of the penwork on this piece. Now, I didn't use any fine tips, just the brush tip and later on the .7 tip. Yeah, I was pleased with how it all went down. Here's where those shadows got too dark, I think. They almost look more like s'mores at this point. Not a fan of the s'mores. It brings back memories of 6th grade camp, and those horrors are best left for another time. There was one thing that was bugging me. Well, actually, there were several things, such as those wonky shadow angles. But I'm not going to pick everything apart here. No, the main thing was that the Bigelow Spiced Chai liquid wasn't dark enough. That was an easy enough fix, so I corrected it. Thinking things were finished, I went ahead with the thumbnail arrangement. For those who may be curious about the uploading process, YouTube provides the option of selecting one of their auto-generated thumbnails or uploading a custom one. We at INCWorks always create a custom one, and I think most other YouTubers do too. It's an extra step for sure, but I outsource that job to producer Mike. And finally, sustenance. Num 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 num. Things were looking good, so using the 0.7 pen, I added a text element. I figured, why not make this journal look a little more journal-y? I mean, it's what Shizen calls this after all. And to me, a journal involves some sort of text element. So with this experiment, I see that it can work for that purpose. So as either a sketchbook or as a journal, this is the Shizen. I'm happy to share this Shizen experience with you. It wasn't so rough after all. Thanks so much for hanging out. Until next time, make sure to get some exercise in between your arting sessions. You don't want to get donut derriere or monosodium gluteus maximus. And stay artsy, my friends.